Hi everyone, welcome back. Mr. Walker here. Moving on to our second lesson in linear equations and looking at forming expressions. So still on part one. But first we need to do the retrieval practice. So get yourself ready. So forming expressions today, we'll be looking at a two-step process. And in the highlighted yellow, you can see the focus of first, second, and combined steps, and that will all become clear soon. So our learning objective, make sure you write this down, be able to form two-step expressions. And the success criteria, recap what an expression is and parts of an equation. So we looked at lots of different parts of our equation when we focused on one step last lesson. So we're just going to recap that. Demonstrate how to form two-step expressions for division, multiplication, adding and subtracting. So like last lesson, but this time with two steps. And you are fine when identifying the two groups of expressions in the correct order, applying terms in the expressions in the necessary place consistently, which will unravel itself more as we move into the lesson. So we have the same sort of slide we used in the first lesson to recap, and we also need to remember that we want to be becoming more familiar with the language and using it more often. So recapping the term and expression. We should all be able to remember that an expression under that little umbrella consists of some terms and the parts of the equations which we labelled last lesson. So start thinking about what those were. And then can anyone identify the different parts of an equation? So just test yourself out now in your book or on a piece of paper and just write down the 4 different parts that we were learning for an equation. Okay, so on to our first I do's and we do's. Division or multiplication first. So it just means it's going to come first in the two-step expression. So the first I do is asking me to form an expression, d multiplied by 5, then add 7. Okay, so d multiplied by 5. Well, I need to put the number 5 first, because we know that when our coefficient, that number 5, means to multiply, okay, the variable, the unknown letter. So that's the first part. And then the second part, or shall I say step, sorry. So first step, second step, 5d, meaning 5 multiplied by d. That was d multiplied by 5, and then add 7. And that would be our two-step expression here. Okay, pause the video, have a go at the we do. Remember to read these questions carefully. Division or multiplication must come first, so there's a nice big clue. Okay, super work if you put d divided by 5 plus 7. Okay, this is in fraction format here. That's okay. Let's try and work with fraction format for now, unless I say any different when you're doing your divisions. The next I do, form an expression, divide d by 5, then subtract 7. So it's the same, d divided by 5, and then just subtract 7. And that's done. Pause the video, have a go at the we do. Remember to read it carefully. Okay, d divided by 5, subtract 7 for the we do. We're now looking straight into these two-step expressions. I'm sure you're grasping it right away. On to another set of I do's and we do's. The first I do, let's see. Reading carefully, d divided by 5, then subtracted from 7. So it's not subtract 7, subtracted from 7. So I'm going to start with, 7 to subtract the d divided by 5. So this time they've switched around. Still two-step, and I've still formed that expression. Reading carefully. Have a go at the we do. So from the last set of I do's and we do's, we had a multiplication of our coefficient 5 and our variable d, but this time that's the second step in the expression, and we've subtracted from 7 first. Okay, next I do, form an expression d divides 5, then subtracted from 7, 7, subtract, d divides 5, okay, nice and easy. Form an expression, 5 divided by d, then add 7. Okay, read carefully, have a go that we do. They mixed it up a little bit more here. So this time it's 5 divided by d, so switching them two around in the first step, and then add 7. Okay, and the 7 goes back to the second step on this occasion. Well done if you got that right. I'm hoping that we're starting to really get the hang of this now. So if you look at the subtitle on this slide, it's saying that division or multiplication second. So have you noticed the underlined words showing you that the second step is division or multiplication? The first I do then, d, add 5, so that's the first step, and then multiplied by 7. That's the second step for the expression. Straightforward. Pause the video, have a go at the we do, please. Okay, well done if you put this. D subtract 5, multiply 7. All that's changed compared to the I do is the operator, so subtraction instead of addition. On to the next I do. So, reading carefully, D subtracted from 5. Well, when it's read like that, it's subtracted from 5. I know that I must start with 5 and subtract D, but it says multiplied by 7. Well, you remember when we were multiplying with our coefficient, the 7 will go there first to show that we're multiplying this d, this variable, 7 times. And that would be our two-step expression there. Please have a go at the we do. So for your turn, reading it carefully, 5 subtracted from d. So d had to come first, subtracting the 5 and then multiplying by 7. Because obviously 5 is a constant, just like the 7's a constant, and it's a number on its own, okay, we don't use them as coefficients next to each other. Alright, I think this is the last set of examples before we do some practice questions yourself. So, you're working really hard, keep it up, and keep grasping how to do these two-step expressions. So we're still looking at the operation coming second. The first I do, 5 subtracted from d, well, subtracted from d, divided by 7. Just gone into that other I do there, it's okay. So remember using that fraction like we said in the first set of examples. Right, your turn. Excellent work if you put 5, add d divided by 7, like this. Okay, the next I do, form an expression, the total of 5, so the total meaning altogether, adding, and 5d, so the total of 5 and 5d divided by 7. 5, total, adding, 5d, okay, divided by 7. So remember what this means the third time I'm talking about it, the 5D. Okay, the 5 is the coefficient, meaning that D would be multiplied 5 times. And what's D? Well, D is the variable, the unknown. So any letter. We're using D in all these examples, as you can see, but that could be X, it could be Y, it could be A, but it's still unknown, it's still a variable, and you'd still times it by 5, the coefficient there. Well done for keeping up, and let's have a go at the we do. So, a bit of a sneaky one here. It's asking us to do 5 divided by D first, and then add 7. So well done if you followed, read carefully, and completed that two-step expression. Right, on to the fun bit, and to test yourself out, we've got 9 questions here. Give yourself plenty of time. Try and do 10 minutes on these. And press play when you're ready for the answers. Grab those green pens. Start making lots of ticks and any corrections necessary. Now, this is where the real good challenge begins. So pull them socks up and get yourself ready for this bit. So now we're being asked in the subtitle, reading carefully, to be combined division and multiplication. So I'll do the first I do, of course. Form an expression D divided by 5 multiplied by 7. Okay, so D is divided, there's that fraction line, by 5. Okay, but it's asking us to multiply by 7. Instead of putting a multiplication and a 7 here like this, I put the 7 into coefficient position, and that is now telling us that 7 is multiplying D, okay, the unknown, and it's also then divided by 5, and that would be our two-step expression for this question. Have a go at the we do, please. Very similar to the I do, except this time we have an E on top as the unknown, the variable, and we divide by D. So well done if you put 7E divided by D. Big tick. Okay, next I do. Form an expression E divided by D multiplied by 2/7. So what we're going to do instead, we're going to come back to the I do and the we do for those with the fractions here. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to have a go at A to F, please. Okay, I'll do quickly C with you. Okay, so 4 divided by M multiplied by 7. Well, what we need to notice here is it's the variable is going to be on the bottom of the division fraction. So 4's at the top. Let's use this blue line here as a division line. Great. 4 divided by M and multiplied by 7. Well, this 7, like we said before, wouldn't just go here. Okay, we can put this 7 on top. Okay, but it wouldn't be 74 divided by M. We'd put a 7 there when we have a letter R unknown, as we've seen in many examples. But what we have to do now is because we know it's a 4, we just simply do 4 times 7. And what does that give us? Correct. 28. So this would now be 28 divided by M. So again, it's about making sure that we read the question properly, knowing the order of our subjects, our terms, and creating the two-step expression without making them little mistakes. But remember, it's okay to make mistakes, and that's why we're doing this, because when we make mistakes, as you've probably heard me say before, we put it right and we get better. So have a go, A to F, so the other 5, please. So there are your answers. Get your green pens. Fantastic if you got all 5, and if you're getting 4 or 3, brilliant. Even if you're getting that 1, you're still making progression. Okay, if you're really finding this difficult at this moment in time, keep doing your best, keep trying hard. And look at the bottom here. We need to think and self-reflect. Okay, what is going well when you're doing these two-step expressions? So what is going well, and then more importantly, identifying the bits that we need to improve. Where are them little errors occurring, and you need to know why. What is it you need to practice? Okay. Okay, everyone. So let's get ready now to stretch our thinking somewhat more. We've got addition and subtraction combined, and when we combined, all it means is we're going to shuffle a couple of things around in our two-step expressions. So the first idea asked us to form an expression, D add 5, then subtract G. Okay, so I'm going to write it as I see it first. D add 5 subtract G. Right, now if you're wondering why I've used 2 different colours, well, the D and the G, they're our variables, so they are terms that are alike. And then the 5 is our constant, which is a term that is alike by itself at this moment in this example. Okay, now let's just say we just add some brackets there just to say that, well, D add 5 then subtract G. So we put the brackets round, well, we know when we put brackets round thing, we do that first, okay, and then the next thing comes second. We don't need to actually work much out here. We just need to shuffle, as I say, 1 or 2 things. So when we have alike terms, like I've just mentioned, those 2 amber D and G variables, all we would do here is we would just simply have the 5 switched with the D and take G. And what we have now is those 2 terms collected. So there's something we do in algebra where we collect like terms, okay? And all that means is, like I said a minute ago, is you put the same terms next to each other. And it's important to remember as well that you keep the operator, addition, multiplication, subtract, for example, that operator stays with the term to its right. So the operator in front of the term on the left stays with it, okay? So what you have there in the end, as we've just said, now we have is 5 plus D subtract G. And that would simply be that expression. So what we need to do now is pause the video and have a go at the we do. Right, so you should have G subtract D plus 5, and it again underneath is pretty much the same. The thing that you had to make sure you did, which we've done on some previous examples, is when you read it, subtracted from G. So we had to make sure that the subtracted from G, that came at the front of the expression. And then we've got our D, so our subtraction symbol and the D together with a like term next to the G, and then the +5. So well done if you got that right. Okay, let's move on to a different one where again we have an extra little bit of thinking here. Okay, so form an expression D subtract 5 subtracted from 7. So there it is again, reading it carefully. So we need to say subtracted from 7. So in a combined, we can move things around, a combined expression. So -7. But remember what will come first, we'll put that in our brackets just now. So we've got our D. And then we've got our subtract 5. So we've got two constants here. Oh, should have done that in black. Two constants and one variable. Okay, now we know that, like we said, we need to collect like terms. We need to get them terms together. Okay, well, all we need to do here now is we need to move the D and 7 around. Now, sorry, I've just noticed I should have had, subtract. Okay, there, because it's subtracted from the 7. I had it as a -7. So sorry if you was wondering what was going on there. Okay, so and remember our operator stays to the left with the constant or the variable next to it. Okay, so that would now be with the D. So what we'll do is we move that 7 and D around, so we'd end up with D subtract 7 subtract 5. Okay, so remember that this expression is now equal to that. So now we've collected these like terms. Okay, them constant. Now we've collected them like terms. Now we can think about, well, what does this actually equal? Well, we know that we can take 5 from 7. So D, okay, would now be subtract, sorry, in the correct colour, Mr. Walker, D subtract 2, because 7 take 5 equals 2. So then it would be D subtract 2, and that would be your final expression. Okay, so like I said, extra little step there in that one. Okay, pause the video, have a go at the we do, and notice that there's two variables now. There's two letters again, not two constants. So here, this should be your final expression. Well done if you got this one right. So 7 subtract D subtract E. As you read it, it says D subtract E. So we wrote that first, and you could put brackets around it, and then you might have put the subtract 7 on this side. However, because it's the D and E are subtracted from 7, we have to make sure that that then shuffles into there. So just moving things around, not having to actually collect like terms because they're already next to each other in this example. Okay, right, here's some more examples to look at. A little bit more thinking with some division fractions, and then we go into some questions. So the first I do here is asking us to simply just shuffle some things around. So I've put it out here, I paused it and did it. So as you can see in the top part, I've done the brackets of the D subtract E by E, because subtract E, because that's the first as we read it, form an expression D subtract E. So that's first in the brackets, and then subtracted from 2 7. So I'll put it on the right hand side, but as you can see underneath on the bottom row, it's subtracted from 2/7, so 2/7 has to come first, subtract D, and then subtract E, and that would be your expression there. Okay, have a go at the redo, pause the video and see how you get on. And that's the answer you should have had. So literally making sure that the 2 divided by 7 fraction was subtracted by D add E. And again, you can keep them brackets to show that, well, when you read it, D add E is what you read first. The terms are together, we've not had to shuffle anything around again yet. So well done if you put that bottom row there. Okay, right, next I do then. So form an expression, D subtracted from E, okay, and then subtracted from 2/7. As always, careful how we read it. So it's asking me to 2/7 need to start with, because it's subtracted, the D subtracted from E is subtracted from 2/7. So then we need to have subtract E, subtract D, and again, just to show how we read it, that would go in the brackets. Okay, so D subtracted from E, that's what we can see in the brackets. Subtracted from 2/7 is what we can see on the left. Oh, I'm sorry, I've messed my colours up. There's the amber to show the terms. Okay, right, last one for you. Have a go. Okay, and that should have been your answer. This time we subtract 2/7, so it stays, the 2/7 stays on the right hand side, and E and D would be subtract first, and showing that with the bracket. So I hope you're really starting to get the hang of this now and putting these little things in place. We didn't really practice much shuffling as we did with the one where we had to collect like terms. There is some in the questions coming up. So straight away you can see there's in A there's constant and a constant there, 2 numbers. Okay, so we may need to get alike terms together, them 2 together. So write it as you see it. So add 3, and then we've got subtracted from 7, so that's going to go over here. Sorry, 7. Okay. And then what you're going to get is the brackets round that. Okay. Now, how can we get them alike terms together and show that it's equal to a simplified expression? So we're simplifying here. So we're basically doing a bit of working out. Well, like we did in the previous example where we did alike terms for the expression. So we've got, well, 7 take 3. Well, that's going to be 4. And then we've still got our subtraction symbol here, which is with our m that's still there. So then that is your simplified expression, 4 subtract m. You took 3 from the 7, and remember the brackets are just to show that you did m, add 3 first, then you subtracted from the 7, put that on, and then you're showing that you've done 7 take 3, that's give you 4, and then you've still got the m. And we've collected like terms because we had to move that into there to go 7 take 3, and then we was able to end up with the 4 in front of the m and the m after the 4. Okay, I want you to know there's a couple, B and C are very similar to A, so have a go at them, and then they do get more difficult as you go on, and you have to start just using the fractions like 2/7, just taking it away from whole numbers like 3, So there's a bit of a clue. So you might end up with something like 2/5/7 in E when you've done your working out. Okay. Best of luck, and press play. Pause the video and then press play when you're ready for the answers. Okay, there they are. So get your green pen and really have a good look at those that you need to make amendments on, and really see. It looks complicated, but it really isn't. So like I was saying about E, once you've practiced a lot of these and get the gangs of it, it soon comes to you. So it was asking you to add 3. Well, there's your brackets straight, and that's what you're seeing first, and then subtract 2/7. Okay, so how do we collect like terms and simplify that? Well, you've got your equals 2 times, so this on the right is equal to that on the left, as we know. That's what we know when we see our equals signs for expressions. So all it's done is we've got the m on its own now on the right, and it's because we've subtracted 2/7 from a whole 3, and you've ended up with 2/5/7. So all you did was take 2 from 7 and end up with 5/7 and a big 2 in front as the whole number, and that's how you've simplified the expression, okay, with like terms. Alright, so just have a read over the learn objective and through the success criteria, making sure that you know where you're up to. Self-assess for 5 minutes. It's really important, as I always say, to see if you can explain your reasoning to yourself, to someone that you can show your understanding with of this learning and skill today. And as always, send that work in. Thanks again, Mr. Walcott, over and out.